Welcome to GMF's 6th edition of the Face-Off Debate. This is a special debate format, an express debate in which we take on pressing and controversial issues in foreign affairs. My name is Kristine Berzina. I'm a senior fellow with the Alliance of Securing Democracy at the German Marshall Fund. You've maybe been with us before. In this format, we have one question, 2 opinions, and 30 minutes. Today, we're taking on an issue that most of you have heard of and that leaves very few people indifferent. We're looking at Nord Stream 2. The question of the day, should Nord Stream 2 be completed? If you joined us before, you know a little bit about our format. We start this half an hour with a poll of you, the audience, and I know many of you are joining us in Europe and in the United States. We'll poll you to see what you think about this question. We will have a debate and then we'll come back. So right now I will begin a poll to see what you think about this question before introducing our speakers. So poll, launch. You'll have 30 seconds to come up with your answers. And in that time, I'll tell you a little bit about what to expect. As a snap debate, we have 2 speakers, one debating the no side, one debating the yes side. Both speakers are going to have 5 minutes for introductory remarks and 5 minutes to rebut the arguments. The aim here is to have a fun and spirited debate. On some issues, our passions run high. It is difficult to see the lightness, but the point here is to spur thought, to spur debate, and to see how we can tease apart these very important issues. Now, when we look at the poll, I'm going to end the polling. And we have a very fairly evenly split response, I'd say. Yes, at 42%, Nord Stream 2 should be completed, and no, 58%. We have 151 people voting. I think we have probably more people coming in as well. So we can revisit some of that poll at the end to see how it all shakes out. Today for you, we have 2 fairly well-known figures in the energy space speaking about the Nord Stream question. The first speaker is going to be on the no side. For the no side, we have Dr. Alan Riley. Alan is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and member of the advisory committee of the energy community in Vienna. There's been a lot of questions about the transparency about where everyone stands on the Nord Stream debate. So for full transparency, Alan has in the past consulted for energy companies such as PG&IG and Naftogaz, but is not currently. On the pro side, yes side, meaning Nord Stream 2 should be completed, we have Dr. Friedbert Pflüger. Dr. Pflüger is the head of a European cluster on climate, energy, and resource security, and he is also the managing partner at Bingmann Pflüger International. As a consultant on energy, he advises the Nord Stream 2 project as well as other energy projects, including matters of LNG. So those are our introductions. I'm going to be turning to Alan first. Alan, you have the task of debating no, Nord Stream 2 should not be completed. You have 5 minutes to make your case. Do we have the timer up? Ready to go. Unmute though. I'll give you those seconds back.
Thank you. Okay, 5 reasons why Nord Stream 2 should be stopped in 5 minutes. First, it's a diversionary pipeline. There is no new gas for Europe. Second, it undermines EU supply security. Third, it splits the single market. Fourth, it undermines Ukraine. And fifth, it is a plunder project for Kremlin elites. So let's start at the beginning, diversionary pipeline. It is a diversionary pipeline. If gas flows through Nord Stream 2, that gas would otherwise flow through the Ukrainian transit pipeline network. So there is no new gas and there is no added value for Europe. The second reason is that it undermines EU supply security. Currently, you've got Nord Stream 1 with 55 billion cubic meters, Yamal with 33, and Ukraine with a capacity of 160 billion, 140 billion cubic meters. With Nord Stream 2 in place, you have Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 following the same route, with altogether 110 billion cubic meters, and YAML with 33 billion cubic meters. So you have less route diversification. You go from 3 routes to 2. And then you've got this Nord Stream 1-2 route with 110 billion cubic meters of gas imported into Europe on an undersea pipeline, separated from most of the way, the pipeline separated by 500 meters in shallow waters, which itself is a supply security risk. But more fundamentally, you've got 160 billion cubic meters of Ukrainian capacity with this hugely diverse pipeline network, 32 billion cubic meters of storage, giving you flexibility, which allows you to ramp up and ensure gas, Europe has gas in winter. And then the third reason is the splitting of the single market. Currently, you have got gas going from west to east via Nord Stream 1 and then the Opal connecting pipeline into Central and Eastern Europe, about 13 billion cubic meters. With Nord Stream 2 and the connecting pipeline EUCERS going the same way, you've got another 45 to 55 billion cubic meters. That's 58 to 68 billion cubic meters of gas going into Central Europe. What does this do? It floods the west to east interconnectors, pushes out competitors, reinforces Gazprom's dominance, and fundamentally splits the single market with a liberalized market in Western Europe and a much more Gazprom-dominated market in Central and Eastern Europe. And fourthly, it undermines Ukraine. Since 2014, Ukraine has received gas and reverse flow from Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia. This is Russian gas, but it's not bought from Gazprom. It's effectively market liberalized gas within the European marketplace. This terminates with Nord Stream 2 because that gas comes via the Ukrainian transit network. And essentially, you are delivering Ukraine's supply security to Gazprom. You're making Ukraine dependent. In addition to which, there is the issue to do with transit fees, 1% of Ukrainian GDP. Well, at the moment, the EU and US are underpinning Ukrainian finances. Why should we support Nord Stream 2 and increase the burden on the EU and the US? And then the other issue, that Nord Stream 2 is a plunder project. If you read the tickling giant Surbank report, they point out that the central purpose for Gazprom infrastructure projects is to benefit the contractors, largely connected to the Kremlin elite. And if you look at the economics of it, you can see the extent to which it cannot be anything else. It's going to take 20 years for Nord Stream 2 to break even. There's no significant economic gain because, of course, there's no new gas, merely transit fees. And the actual cost is not 10 billion cubic meters, it's 17 billion cubic meters. This is because you don't count the onshore when you look at the figures. So why should the EU support this elite enrichment project? Surely it should block it. Nord Stream 2 should be stopped. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, coming in under time. You have made a very pointed case, 5 points in less than 5 minutes. Dr. Pflüger, do you have a counter argument about why, yes, Nord Stream 2 should be completed? You also have 5 minutes to make your case.
Thank you, Kristine, and thank you, Alan. Let me first of all say, I have a mandate to advise Nord Stream as we advise the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline and LNG terminals, but I have not the right to speak for Nord Stream or to lobby for Nord Stream. So I'm just expressing my own opinion. It might not be completely objective, but it's my opinion and I'm not speaking for anybody. First point is, whether it was a wise idea or not, Nord Stream is almost completed. More than 90% are there. And to leave a ruin in the Baltic Sea is not a good idea. And it is not a good idea, especially as all the permissions are there. We have, and that is what Angela Merkel means when she says it's a business project. She never denied that there are geopolitical thoughts also. But a business project means companies, that's Gazprom, but it's also Shell, Engie, France, it is Uniper, it is Wintershall, and it's OMV from Austria. So it's 5 huge European companies that are co-invested there. And of course, this is a project which has gotten all the permissions. And if we want to be reliable partners as Germans, as Europeans, I think there is not the slightest reason for stopping that project. There is no public money in it. It is a privately financed project and it should be completed. If we don't complete it, it will cost the state billions of euro as the companies will ask for damages. So that's the first reason. Second reason is that I do not buy the idea that Nord Stream is a threat to European energy security. That would have been the case 10 years ago. Quite true. 10 years ago, when we had the Russian-Ukrainian gas crisis, Russia had a lot of control, especially in Central and Eastern Europe. Since then, the European Union has built more than 30 LNG terminals, interconnectors, storage facilities. We have reverse flow. You can buy and sell gas from everywhere. So it is a liquid market today. And by the way, it's a buyer's market. So if Gazprom would ever try to blackmail us with anything, or Russia would do so, we have alternatives today with LNG, with interconnectors, and with our storage facilities. So it was true 10 years ago. It's not true anymore as we have acted during these last 10 years. Third point is, and I think that's very important, we all try to do our utmost to help Ukraine, and especially the German government did. And we initiated, together with the EU, direct talks between Russia and Ukraine to prolong the transit agreement. So I think it was especially the German government which was very keen to act on that front. And it was told to us, well, if you have that transit agreement, which was signed last November, in place, then we will let Nord Stream go. And some really feel cheated until today. My fourth point is whether or not one is in favor of Nord Stream, let's stop with that sanctions business. We are partners in the alliance. We should have different positions from time to time. But let us stop this Trump business of sanctions. No, we should discuss and then find a solution. And therefore, that's my very last point. I'm very grateful that in Europe, people like Wolfgang Ischinger, or in the United States, people in the Atlantic Council like Richard Morningstar or Dan Fried, definitely know doves vis-a-vis Russia, critical to Russia. Say, let's find a compromise, let's get that elephant out of the room and concentrate on the enormous chances that we have in energy issues and climate issues to comply with the Paris Agreement, enhance renewables. That's our core task. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Initial statements on both sides, addressing certain common issues, energy supply security for the EU as a whole, Ukraine, the US brought up, always an important issue evermore. So back to you, Alan. You've seen these initial arguments. Some of them already act as initial counter arguments. What do you say?
Right, okay. Just from the top, take the issue of the pipeline is almost completed. And there are, we can't leave it in the sea. Well, one has to first of all think about the fact that you have to think about that on one side, but the downsides on the other, which I'm not going to repeat, but in terms of the supply security risk for the European Union, the impact on the single market, the impact on Ukraine. But there's another point as well. It won't be completed even if it's completed, because even if it's physically completed, there is all the issues under European Union law. There's Article 36 exemption. It's going to have to be unbundled. It's got to have liberalization, third-party access, and crucially, it will need an Article 11 certificate. Does it pose a supply security risk to the member state doing the regulation, which is Germany, or the Union as a whole? That's Article 11 of the Gas Directive 2009. And the point about that is that that will all be litigated in the court. So before we get to anything about, when we talk about completion, it won't be physically, even if it's physically completed, it will not be completed. It will not have a transmission system operator certificate until the case has been disposed of in the Court of Justice of the European Union. So we are talking several years from now before that will happen. So this is not going to go away, whether there are sanctions or not, or whether it's actually physically completed. It will still go on and the questions will remain live. It cannot be put behind. I think the second thing is to look at this issue of damages. I think the German government, if there is an issue of damages, if it's stopped, it can first raise the question of whether or not the Western partners have received already payments to cover the cost of any losses, and what arrangements have been made between the Western energy partners and Gazprom. It's also clear that from the very beginning of the project, because of the monumental level of hostility against Nord Stream 2, that it was a clear political risk. So upon their own heads be it. In addition to which, there is the very issue of European Union law, that even if it's physically completed, it may not be able to be legally operated. So again, you have a very serious problem in relation to damages. And then there's the LNG issue. Yes, there's 30 LNG terminals. Most of them are in the UK and Spain. The only ones are anywhere in northern Central Europe are at Swinoujscie in Poland and Klaipėda in Lithuania. And the only other ones which are possible to use, I suppose, are down really sort of near the port of Athens and in the Peloponnese. And the difficulty there is Gazprom is blocking the use of those, partly by the flow of gas from Turk Stream, and somehow the inability of Bulgaria to ever build its interconnectors. I think more deeply than all of this is that when you start talking about, if you move on to sanctions, it is the reason, it's not because the good grace of the German government, there is a transit contract with Ukraine. It is the fact that US sanctions were imposed on the Nord Stream project, and as a result of which, Gazprom was forced to do a deal with Ukraine. And that really takes you to this issue about trust. I mean, you talk about we shouldn't do sanctions, we're all partners, but how much of a partner has Germany been? One can actually take the view that in terms of losing trust amongst EU member states, well, okay, the Brits are crazy and illogical in relation to Brexit, but at least they have not been working hand in hand with a hostile power against the security interests of other EU states. And surely so that there is a fundamental issue of trust. And I think that one of the real problems with all of this is that the extent to which the German political establishment do not understand, do not appreciate the scale, the demolition of trust in the German government in Central and Eastern Europe, and to a degree in Western Europe as well, and with the United States. How can you go around doing something like this when you're cutting so massively against the interests of other states? I mean, how can we have really any form of European foreign policy, any strategic autonomy, when we have Berlin behaving in this fashion? I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. We're going from EU law litigation through the arguments of sanctions, trust, and geopolitics largely. Can we, from the yes side, how do we rebut those arguments?
Well, I think that is serious stuff that Alan put forward, cooperating with an hostile power. Well, we have since 50 years an energy partnership with Russia. And that was a deal in the detente policy time done by Willie Brown. And the idea was we built the pipelines, they send us the gas. And that energy partnership for Germany and large parts of Europe worked very well. And it went throughout the Cold War. And we have a lot of criticism to Russia. And I think to question the loyalty of Germany towards the alliance is really goes too far now. I mean, I'm also of the opinion that Germany should do more for its own defenses and comply with NATO agreements and NATO contracts. So I'm not free of, well, I don't want to defend my government against everything, but I think Germany has been extremely loyal to the alliance throughout these years. But we also and always had a partnership with Russia. And that partnership that has a historical background. We have learned that there's never peace in Europe if there is not peace between Russia and Germany. That does definitely not mean peace for any price. Therefore, we joined NATO. Therefore, we have defense forces, and therefore we criticize the Russian government when it, for instance, in the case of Navalny, and we stay together with the Americans, loyal to the sanctions against Russia, the sanctions that we have discussed and agreed upon together in the Atlantic Alliance. But now if one country, the United States, says, well, but we want to do more and not only punish Russia, but punish European companies who have been part of that deal, whether you like it or not, but it was a democratic deal, lawful deal, that goes too far. And well, it was the EU Commission and not the German government. It was the president of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who said, the Commission has been closely following the recent legal initiatives by the US aimed at introducing sanctions against Nord Stream 2. The Commission firmly opposes the imposition of unilateral sanctions against EU companies conducting legitimate business. And I think that is the EU's position. And if Poland and Ukraine do not feel, and the Baltics do not feel comfortable with it, yes, I understand that, but we have done a lot to ease their fears. We finance, by the way, the EU finances it. The new Baltic pipeline, which brings gas from Norway via Denmark to Poland. We have supported LNG terminal in Svinemünde, in Lithuania. We have done everything to work on interconnectors and reverse flow. So, and we have helped the Ukraine more than any other European country in the last years to find their way to become democratic and a social market economy. So I buy everything, and I think it's very legitimate if you have arguments against Nord Stream, but to say Germany is not a loyal partner, Alan, I'm sorry, that is a below that what you normally say.
Can I respond?
Yes, I think we'll have 1 minute of responses back and forth.
One of my great heroes is Willie Brown, and I think that if you actually talk about, if Willie Brown was here now, metamorphosized, the point I would make to him about Ostpolitik is that when you're dealing with the USSR, you were dealing with a Pacific power who simply wanted to hold on to what it's got. The difference with the Russian Federation is that it's a power which wants to overturn the post-Cold War settlement. It wants to throw off all of the deals which were made at the end of the Cold War. And so the point is trying to have a relationship which, like you had in the days of Ostpolitik, is not possible. And you will continually, in these deals you do, you're continually undermining the security of the West.
Could I answer?
And I think it is.
Yes, so Eleanor, you 10 more seconds, and then to
different between Ostpolitik and now. And I think that is one of the misconceptions of German policy in all of this, that you're dealing with a different power, with a different objectives.
Thank you. And now the minute to rebut.
Alan, Willy Brandt is not my party, as you know, he was a social democrat, but I believe he was a great man, especially here. Why? We had a Cold War before detente. Russia invaded Afghanistan. Russia was active in Angola. Russia tried to overthrow governments even in Italy or in Latin America, as you know, supported communists everywhere in the world. And it was just a competition without rules. And Ostpolitik brought rules to the game. And I think we should learn from that. And the basic idea was you have to be able to defend yourself, but you also have to find areas where you cooperate and where you trade and where you bring people together. And exactly these two things we have to do. We have to be tough, but on the other hand, we have to have a dialogue and to deal with the other partner. That is the core of Ostpolitik. It was never loving or embracing Russia or the Soviet Union. It was to find a codex. And I think we should do our utmost not to put more oil in the fire, but safeguard those areas where we peacefully cooperate for the sake of stability and peace. And I think that is possible if we do it in the way it was done by the European Commission and by the German government in the last part. And I see that the Biden administration tries its utmost to get away from the sanctions policies and consult with allies, have their different opinion. They are not in favor of Nord Stream, and we don't expect them ever to be, but to find some compromises and do even more for the Baltics and the Ukrainians is something where we're very open to.
Thank you very much for these final comments. As I said in the beginning, we had an initial poll about whether it should be completed, and now we have a poll again. I will reopen polling. Let me just make sure that it, yes, okay. Launching the poll now. Exit poll, should Nord Stream 2 be completed? The arguments we saw have to do with supply security. And they have to do with, is it completed? If it's completed, is it not completed at all if it is completed? There is a question of Ukraine and what should be done for Ukraine and not. And then there's the big question of, will Ostpolitik work today? Is it different than it was when Willie Brown created it? And how does transatlantic relations also play into this picture? How does sanctions change the view? So I think we have our exit poll. Let me share the results. Results are closer than when we started. We have, should it be completed, 45% versus 42% have said yes, 55% say no. We have more people participating, perhaps some latecomers, so it's not a perfect sample size. We have about 30 more than last time. But I think this gives you a glimpse. It is interesting that the opinions are so split, and it's always interesting to debate these questions with such spirited and informed debaters on issues that really span a lot of technical questions of energy, economics, European trade, global trade, transatlantic relations with Russia, and history. So I really thank our speakers, Dr. Alan Riley and Dr. Friedbert Pflüger, for coming to us and providing us their insights into this view and into this very controversial, pressing question currently on the transatlantic stage. So thank you very much. I also want to thank the GMF Face-Off team, Jessica, William, Nicola. We do try to bring you these face-off debates monthly, and we will be sure to be in touch with what comes next in the face-off series, something surely that will keep you awake and maybe make a more exciting afternoon or morning in your weekly schedule. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for our speakers. Thank you very much for our audience, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.